Rima.
BBC Radio Leeds.
Let's talk about this story about debt, because we know we're in a cost of living crisis right now. We know financial worries for families across West Yorkshire are only mounting in so many different ways. Bradford-based debt advice charity Christians Against Poverty are warning of a silent epidemic of fear and shame and isolation that are gripping those who are in financial trouble. Now, a report released by the charity suggests that on average, people in Yorkshire who come to the charity for debt help owe around £12,000 each. That's just on average. That's a lot of money. Our reporter Aisha Iqbal has more.
I just wasn't putting money away. I wasn't looking at the bills, the credit cards. Then the phone calls started, people coming to the door, and it was just soul destroying.
When Beverly Callan moved to Huddersfield with her young son after a family breakdown, she hoped for a fresh start. Instead, spiralling debts and soaring bills pushed her to the brink.
All my finances, my credit cards, the landlord was giving me notice to leave, and I just didn't know where to start.
Beverly's story reflects a wider crisis highlighted by Christians Against Poverty, which helped her. More and more people are turning to charities as government-backed services like Citizens Advice struggle to keep up with demand.
Often we are the last resort. People have tried themselves. They've tried reaching out for help, but maybe not found anything. It's just fantastic to be able to help people, but obviously we can't help everybody.
Campaigners warn recently announced government measures like regulating bailiffs simply won't fix the personal debt crisis without more local investment in debt support.
I'm Toby Murray. I'm the Policy and Campaigns Manager for Debt Justice. We are a campaigning organisation that works with communities and people in debt. Our latest figures show that 10.1 million people are over-indebted in the UK, and those measures, that's simply not going to scratch the surface. So we need to go much further. We need the government to engage seriously with things like duty of care, to engage seriously with banning the bailiffs, and to engage seriously with fair write-off mechanisms for people in debt.
Today, Beverly is training as a barista and rebuilding her life. Proof, she says, that with the right support, no one has to face debt alone.
I was very, very low. There were some dark nights, and the process itself was incredibly long for me, but it was worth it.
Aisha Iqbal there talking to Beverly Callan in Huddersfield about her story. Also, we heard from Policy and Campaigns Manager of Debt Justice there, Toby Murray, and he joins me now. Morning, Toby.
Morning, Rima. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for being here, because this is, it's so striking, this number. The average amount that people are going to Christians Against Poverty with, that they're in debt with, £12,000. That's so much money, Toby.
It's a huge amount, isn't it? And I think what that number, what it doesn't get to the core of as well, is how scary some of that debt is. So I was looking through that report, and obviously the 12,000 really stands out. But what is striking about Yorkshire and Humber is that it has the highest level of what we call priority debts nationally as well. So people in debt, in that £12,000, they often have 13 different priority debts.
Wow.
13 different debts, half of which will be priority debts. And those are the debts where things can get really scary really quickly. Those are the ones like your council tax debt bill, like energy debt, like rent. So there's a definite worrying epidemic going on, I think is the right language.
Is it that people, because, whenever we talk about debt, Toby, I think it's important that we confront one of the reasons why it can spiral out of control, and that is the sense of shame that people feel about it. They feel embarrassed to talk about the fact that they've got into debt, as if it's, some moral failing that they have allowed to happen. When we know that actually in a lot of cases, it's just really hard out there, and it's very easy to fall into debt. There are a lot of predatory firms that, make it easy for you to think, I'll get this money and later off I'll pay it off. And then you never quite get round to the paying off bit. Is that part of the reason why this is the average number that this charity are seeing? People coming through the door going, all right, I'm here now. Is it just spiralling because of that?
Yeah, completely. And I think that's so important. If any of your listeners are hearing this and they're in this situation and they're thinking, God, it's my fault that I'm in this position. Debt is set up to make us feel like that, but actually it is always the result of systematic factors. If we look at just one type of debt, council tax debt. We're doing a lot of work on this at the moment. We did some work with the newspaper recently that found that Yorkshire and Humber has the highest levels of council tax debt in the country. And the reason for that is very straightforward. Council tax debt has risen by council tax rates have risen by 54% over the last 10 years, while wages have done absolutely nothing like that. They've gone up by 6, 7, 8%. And so you can see that if you've got an ever decreasing pay packet, how are you going to pay that ever increasing council tax bill? And so people in Yorkshire, in Humber, will just be really struggling to make their paycheck make ends meet. And I'm sure many of your listeners will feel that. But the way we talk about debt and the way that we talk about people in debt, and as you said, like lots of the language that comes out of creditors and lenders is very much you've made a mistake, you're behind on your bills, you've made the wrong choices, and this is your fault. So it's not difficult to see why people feel that isolation when that's what's surrounding them.
Absolutely, and we know that there are debt issues in West Yorkshire, but on a national scale, you mentioned council tax, and that was something that we covered. Bradford is paying; it's skyrocketed in that area, the rate of council tax. Are you seeing this on a national scale, though? Is everyone suffering, or is this a regional problem?
It's definitely not a regional problem. We're calling it a household debt crisis. At the moment, 10.1 million people in the UK are what we would call over-indebted. So that means they are either finding their credit commitments a real heavy burden, or they've fallen behind on bills. So 10.1 million people, about 1 in 6 across the UK, are over-indebted. 4.4 million are in council tax debt. There is £4.2 billion worth of energy debt across the UK. So we're absolutely in a crisis. And while there's been some positive stuff from the government, they are introducing caps on universal credit deductions for debt. They're introducing new buy now, pay later regulation. They're doing some consultations around debt. Those are welcome steps, but they do little to really tackle that scale of the household debt crisis.
Yeah. Just looking at some of the numbers from this report from Christians Against Poverty, which I'm sure you've seen as well, Toby. But just some more numbers that have just absolutely... I mean, it's not shocking because we've known that this is going on, but it's shocking to see it in a report. 59% of people borrowed money to pay for their regular food shop. 63% have struggled to afford a bed or a mattress, something as simple as that. 72% going without healthy food. And this is one, 62% frightened about a knock at the door. Tell me about that last one, because I don't know, in my mind, bailiffs are a thing of the past. I don't know, is that still happening? Is that still allowed to happen? Someone coming and knocking on your door to try and retrieve funds?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that number is not surprising at all. This is something we're campaigning on a lot with people currently in Manchester and in London, but we're hoping to spread further sooner. Where the worst thing people tell us the worst thing about being in debt is that knock at the door, and it is bailiffs turning up, and it's very much still allowed. And it's been going on for centuries now. It is such an old-fashioned thing to happen.
It's so Victorian, isn't it? It's such an awful way to deal with it.
Honestly, Rima, it goes back even further than that, and I cannot believe it. It comes across with William the Conqueror, and we still have them. It's absolutely wild. So yeah, it is still a problem, and actually the biggest user of bailiffs across the country, and I find this shocking, and I'm sure your listeners will find this shocking, is our local authorities. It's our councils. They sent bailiffs out to collect council tax 1.3 million times is the latest figures that we have.
And how successful is that? Because I just can't see that knocking on someone's door who's already vulnerable, who already probably has thousands of pounds of debt elsewhere, is going to come up with that money on the doorstep. I just can't see it happening, Toby, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that is the crux of the problem. You've hit it on the head, is that often these people, they live, if you can't afford to pay your council tax bill, it's often because you're living below the poverty line or you're on a very low income. And so if someone's knocking on your door and saying, well, I'm going to take your car that you probably need to get to work, I'm going to take your sofa, I'm going to basically force you to try and borrow money off your friends, your family, or some guy down the pub who you don't know, that's only going to push you further and further into difficulty. And it doesn't even work that well for councils. Bailiffs collect about 20p in the pound for what they're given. So it comes at a huge cost to people in debt. It comes at a huge emotional cost to people in debt. And it doesn't even really work
Which means the rest of us are paying for it through my council tax. Yeah. So we're paying for this situation as well. Just quickly, Toby, before I let you go, obviously we know that if you get into debt, we're living within, a capitalistic society where you do have to pay your debt back. At the end of the day, that is how it works. We're not saying that, look, everyone should be let off. We're saying there are ways to deal with this. For anyone this morning who is maybe really struggling under the weight of some debt, maybe they've not told anyone, maybe they're listening to that £12,000 and either thinking, yep, that's me, or they're thinking, I am well past that point. Where should they go? What is the help out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've heard from Christians Against Poverty, CAP, already. They're a brilliant charity. They do lots of great work in the community. Definitely worth reaching out to. There are other national providers, people like Citizens Advice, I'm sure your listeners have heard from. They're phenomenal, or National Debt Line are worth reaching out to as well. But there are brilliant community debt advice offerings as well that your listeners, if they go to the Money and Pension Service Money Advisors Network, they can find some guidance there. So there are really good organisations doing this, and I would say debt advisors are some of the best people we know. It's definitely worth reaching out to them. They can really make a difference. Yeah. But their jobs they're only getting harder. People are increasingly complex forms of debt. So they have more debt than ever. So the government really does need to step up and make a bit of a difference here as well.
Yeah. But in the meantime, if you are struggling, please do not buckle under the weight of this thing. There are people waiting to help, and making, a plan. I think that's the really important thing, isn't it, Toby? If you're struggling with debt, the best help you can get is someone making a plan with you for an affordable amount to come out of your salary or whatever it is every single month, rather than you stressing about it and nothing being done and nothing being paid.
Completely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that goes back to what we started on, doesn't it? Is that these are systematic things where you need someone to help you through it and move you through that system, to hold your hand and to support you as it's going on. And it's not just about sorting it yourself. I think we're so constantly told we get into these problems ourselves, we need to sort them ourselves, but actually problem shared is a problem halved. So get that support is absolutely necessary, and working with other people in debt is really key as well.
Toby Murray, thank you so much for being here this morning. Toby Murray, who's a policy and campaigns manager of Debt Justice there. And, Toby, I think really compassionate, really understanding what the problems are. And certainly, if I was in this situation, I would want someone like Toby helping me, or one of his colleagues. So please do get help if you need it. If you've been affected by anything that we've talked about this morning, bbc.co.uk/action line, loads of things that you can access on there, including charities and organisations that can help you with a bit of debt advice for free. This is a story that is it's shocking on some fronts, but actually in a cost of living crisis makes complete sense. This report that's been released by debt advice charity Christians Against Poverty, who say that the average amount that they are seeing people in Yorkshire come to them for help with, about £12,000 each. Because we were talking about buy now, pay later situations. That's all changing now. And we had a real sense of a division between people going, I would never do something like that, and other people saying, look, that is the way that I survive. I know that it comes into, debt comes in under many different guises.
The sound of West Yorkshire. Breakfast with Rima.